Hi guys, it's Neil from Behaviour K9 and I'd just like to welcome you all to your online training course. So today we're going to do a bit of an induction session. No dogs involved in this one at the moment. I will do a little bit of demo with one of my dogs during the session just to see the kind of things that you're going to be looking at. But in essence it's mostly to just give you some background information as to what you're going to be doing on the course. And you can keep going back to this video as much as you want to just to look at the information on it. Some of you may already be following us on Facebook. If you're not, look for Best Behaviour K9 on Facebook. You can join the group, which is an interactive group where people can upload videos, show other people what they're doing, ask questions, and as a group we can kind of answer those questions as best we possibly can, just to help you develop your training. Also, we have the Facebook page. There you'll get loads of information, the different things that we're doing throughout the company, but also offers that we're offering in our training, updates as to how things are going, and obviously these different courses that we're doing online as well. Also, we're on Instagram, and the name on there is BBK9 Training. So if you are on Instagram and you prefer Instagram, then look for us on there and follow us. And again, all the information on there, it keeps you updated with everything that we're doing and links that you need to be following in your training. And also, we're also on Twitter. So if you are a kind of a Twitter kind of person, you can find us at Best Behaviour K9 and follow us on there as well. We also have a dog-friendly coffee shop in Sheffield. If you are interested in looking into that, then it's the Coffee Kennel. Coffee Kennel is basically attached to our training school in Sheffield, and we've got windows where you can see through and watch the training as well. And we currently have an offer on in the coffee shop. If you spend more than £15 in the coffee shop, you get a voucher where you can actually take £10 off any form of training that you have with Best Behaviour K9. So make sure that when it's open, get yourself down there and enjoy the home cooked foods and some amazing coffee from a local supplier in Sheffield. Also, Coffee Kennel is on Facebook and Instagram. So if you want to go onto Facebook and look for the Coffee Kennel Limited, then you can find the Facebook page where you can follow and look at all the offers and some amazing food that we show you on there that we're doing, and events. We've got some brilliant breed specific events coming up and that kind of stuff. Also, we have Coffee Kennel on Instagram, so search for Coffee Kennel. So loads of ways to keep in touch, guys. And like I said, there's some amazing dog walks around the Coffee Kennel in Sheffield. If you know that area, if you go on the Facebook page, it gives you information about all those different walks. So getting back to Best Behaviour K9, your customer portal. Can I just check that everybody has received the link to the customer portal? This is where you can contact Best Behaviour K9 directly via email or via your portal. We get to send you some information that you need to see. You get all your booking invoices through there. So if you are taking these courses, it tells you exactly what date you do the classes. And also, if you're training with us at our training schools, then it gives you a really good understanding of the dates you should be there, the times of the courses, etc. So nobody can ever get the dates wrong. Also give the opportunity for you to actually book other training there as well, where you can contact the staff in the office and they'll get back to you. So have a look at your customer portal. If you're having any problems logging in or don't know how to update your profiles, etc., then just give the office a bell or contact them via email and they'll be able to help you through that. One thing to do once you do log into your online portal is make sure you sign your training agreement. We can't continue training, guys, unless you've signed your training agreement. Unfortunately, legally, that's what we need you to do. So if you're having any problems, if you go onto when you first log into your portal, it will tell you right in the middle there whether or not you have any outstanding agreements for the training that you've booked. And if there are, just make sure you sign that, read it carefully and sign it, and then we can carry on with your training. Okay. If you have any problems, again, trying to find that, contact the office and either Claire or Hazel will be more than happy to have a chat with you and help you with that. So, what do we actually do in relation to the Best Behaviour K9 online training? Well, basically, we're going to show you how to use humane, scientifically proven training methods to get the best out of your dog in relation to your training, but also having a bit of fun. The whole essence of this is making training fun and getting the best out of both you and the skills that you possess or learn, and also the dog. So the aims of this course, basically, one of the first things we want to do is teach you about socialization. Whether you've got a pup or whether you've got an older dog that you've just rescued, or you've just not done any training with it as a pup and you just started to get into it now when they're a bit older, then we want to show you how to socialize your dogs properly. And during the course, we're going to put in demonstrations and exercises you can put in place to help you teach your dog how to behave around other dogs. We also talk about the importance of understanding what socialization really means, because a lot of people tend to think that socialization is about letting your dog frolic and play with other dogs. Now, even though it's really nice to see that, and most dogs love it, there are dogs out there that aren't a big fan of this, don't like dogs in their personal space and that kind of stuff. You may be very lucky to have a dog that loves this kind of interaction. Unfortunately, there are thousands upon thousands of people who have dogs that are nervous, fearful, and really don't like dogs in their personal space, and it can cause some major problems if you allow your dogs to run up to them. So what we try to do is show you how to socialize dogs correctly, putting control methods in place to ensure that when your dogs do socialize and interact with other dogs, that we do it in a safe and educational type way to make sure the dogs understand how that should be. But also it's to enlighten you as the owners as to the restrictions on that kind of stuff and the kind of things you should be looking for in your training. So those are one of the things that we'll be covering in quite a lot of the classes as we go along. We're also going to teach you how to engage with your dog. Engagement with your dog is getting attention from them. What we want to try and do is make you Disneyland. You know, I want my dog to know that Disneyland happens when he's with Dad. And the same with you. We want your dogs to see that you are the best thing since sliced bread. I want to be with you. I want to engage with you. That doesn't stop them wanting to interact with other dogs. It doesn't stop them wanting to interact with people. But what it does do is make sure you've got that control when you need it. And it's just being able to encourage your dog not to do things that you would prefer them not to do. By using natural training games and play exercises, that the dogs start developing skills and wanting to play with you. So that's one of the other things that we build in, and that's quite a massive theme throughout our course. We'll be introducing loads of different toys, food games, all that kind of stuff in your class. But also, with the obedience side of it, we do it through positive reinforcement. So dogs want to be obedient, as in the way that we look at it. You know, most humans think that obedience means doing as you're told. Dogs don't really see it as that way, but what we're going to do is try and make it so the dog wants to pay attention to you, wants to listen to these cues that you're giving them and follow the instructions that you give them. And it's all to be done in fun, okay? But remember, with all games or anything like that, they all come with rules, and it's how you explain those rules to your dog is really important. We're also going to teach you how to communicate with your dog clearly. There are so many instances where the way we communicate with our dogs causes so many problems. The information we give them, they just don't understand. Or what you think you're saying to your dog is misinterpreted by them and they think you mean something completely different. So what we're trying to do in this course is try and make sure that the type of communication you use with your dog is clear, consistent, concise, and there's never any misunderstanding as to what it is you actually want them to do. Okay, and that's again, it's a complete theme throughout the course, making sure that your communication style is appropriate for you and your dog. So, on that note, how do we communicate clearly with our dogs? Well, here at Behaviour K9, we use a method called marker training. Some of you may already know what marker training is. Somebody might be thinking, what the hell's marker training? Well, basically, first of all, we need to look at what a marker is in this kind of environment. Basically, a marker is a signal that you give to your dog that explains to them that whatever they just did is exactly what you wanted, and a reward or reinforcement of some sort is coming their way. That's basically all it is. Now, you can mark your dog's behavior in many different ways. Two of the most well-known ways are clickers. So if anybody has ever heard of clicker training, that's marker training. And also the word yes. We use the word yes quite a lot because in human society, yes means good. Yep, it's permission or whatever it is you might want to look at it. But yes is usually a good thing. Yeah, I like that. Now you can have your reward. So we actually will encourage you to use yes. We have no issue with you using clickers. Now, if you're doing online training, clicker training, it will be brilliant. You've no distractions. You know other dogs in the class that your clicker may make them think that they're going to get a reward. So clicker training is brilliant. The only thing about clicker training is sometimes it can be a little bit cumbersome. Some of the things we're going to ask you to do is going to test your ability to multitask. Some people kind of get their body movement wrong, sometimes trying to hold a clicker and a lead and a treat and inform your dog of what you want them to do. Sometimes that can get a little bit mixed up. So the clicker can sometimes get in the way. That's not to say it's not an amazing way of training, because it is. But I tend to use the word yes, mainly because I always tend to forget my clicker. So I've always got my voice, thankfully, and my dog learns that the word yes means a treat's coming. So that's what the style of training that we use. We use marker training. It's a really clear and concise way of explaining to the dog whether it's done what we want or not, and whether or not we need to keep it working a little bit harder. Now, the type of training that we're going to use, along with the clicker training, is basically, initially we'll be using what's known as bribe and reward type training, or luring. Now, those of you who want to know a little bit more of the science, basically this is classical conditioning. We're encouraging the behavior through luring and information. So the information we give them is hand signals initially, and that way the dog follows that signal in order to give us a behavior. That's basically, in a really rough nutshell, classical conditioning. So we'll be utilizing that initially because it's the quickest way to get you results. Then what we'll start doing is encouraging you to remove the bribe. This is a really important part of your training, because if you don't remove the bribe early enough, then what happens is the bribe can become a component part of the information your dog needs to do the exercise. Most of you might think, yeah, but I don't mind waving around the treat. That's great, not a problem. The problem is the day you forget your treats. And why does my dog not do anything when I ask it to do, but I've got to show it a food? That's because we've never got rid of the bribe or the lure. And that's one massive problem that we have. So what we try to do is, as soon as your dog is consistent with offering the behavior when using a bribe, then we try and help the dog do the exercise without the bribe. And that's not to say you don't give them the food or the reward. That's really important to understand. Sometimes when we try and get people to remove the bribe, what they tend to think is that we stop giving them food or give them a reward. That's not the case. A bit of an analogy for you is, if you've got a teenage child who's got a bit of an issue with cleaning their room, then you may say to them, right, here's a £5. If you clean your room, I'll give you this £5. Well, that is a lure or a bribe, okay? Then you would then give them the £5 once they've completed the exercise. So that would then be their reward for completing that work. Now, if you were to remove that lure, then basically what you would be saying is, I need you to clean your room. Now, you wouldn't suggest to them that they're going to get a bribe or a reward, and then once they did do it, if they do it, then you would go, I really like the fact you've cleaned your room, here's your £5. And basically, that would be the reward without luring or bribing initially. Now, as history continues and your child associates what happens, then your child will probably notice that actually, if I clean my room, there's a good chance mum and dad will give me a reward of a £5. So you'll find that behavior then continues more regularly. And we'll go into that kind of reinforcement later on throughout the course. But basically, that's what we're going to initially do. We're going to initially use the lure to encourage the behavior. Once the dog understands the game, then we'll remove that lure, but we still give them the reward at the end of it. And we'll show you different ways of being able to remove that bribe or that lure anyway. So, something that we need to think about when we talk about the clarity of information and the way that we give it to the dogs. We've got to think about the way that we introduce information to our dogs, and making sure that that introduction of information gives us the best picture and understanding from our dogs. So what we've got to think about is the way that we give the information has to complement your dog's primary forms of communication. And to know how to do that, firstly, you need to figure out what the primary forms of communication are. So roughly, for a dog, there are basically 4 primary forms of communication for your dog. And these are the primary forms of communication that they use to interact with each other or interact with us, okay? So firstly, one of them is body language. Dogs interact with us and each other all the time using body language. It's one of the main primary forms of communication. Eye contact, that's another form of communication. Many times your dogs have tried to move around the house, try to gain your eye contact. The minute you got it, brilliant, they give you some form of behavior to interact with you. So eye contact's another really important form of communication. And throughout the course, you'll consistently hear me and the trainers say, if your dog's not looking at you, then it's not listening to you, because that eye contact's really important. Thirdly, physical contact or physical touch. Your dog physically touches you, whether it be with its mouth, its paw, its body. It will do a variety of different ways, but physical contact is a really important primary form of communication for dogs. You'll see them doing it with other dogs, interacting with them, inhibiting their bites, muzzle grabs, during play fight, loads of different ways your dog will use physical contact. Okay, so third one is physical contact. And finally, scent. Your dogs use smell and scent to communicate between each other all the time, and your dogs will do exactly the same with you. Okay, you'll have some dogs that will rub against you to leave odor on you. You'll have some dogs that will sniff you and check you out. They lick you, because dogs, you know, get information as a result of licking through their olfactory system and their scent glands. So scent is the fourth primary form of communication for a dog. Now, most of you were probably expecting me, and I don't know if you can hear Ruby barking up in the office, because obviously we've got our dogs here while we're doing these courses. Some of you may think, why isn't barking one of these primary forms of communication? Because my dogs bark all the time. Well, barking actually isn't the primary form of communication. Dogs generally only bark through frustration, excitement, or fear, or a mixture of all and a variety of those three. So if you actually think about when your dog barks, what I would say is take a few minutes after you watch this video and watch your dog and look for the moments when they bark. And what are the stimuluses to cause that barking? The likelihood is they're either excited, you might have got the lead out, okay, and they know that the lead means I'm going for a walk, so the dog might start barking. You might get the treats out of the cupboard, the food bowl out. Those are things that cause the barking, so that's excitement. You may be holding your dog on the lead and they're trying to burst out through the door, or they're trying to go and say hello to another dog, which we'll talk about during the socialization element. And the dog's barking through frustration because you're not letting them get to where they want to go. So frustration is another one. But also, your dogs bark to warn things off, warn people off, warn dogs off. A lot of people think that dogs have fight, flight, and freeze in relation to dealing with fear. But actually, they've also got an element called repel. And that's basically dogs bark sometimes to try and discourage other dogs coming anywhere closer to them, or people. So barking is usually either through excitement, frustration, or an element of fear. Okay? So, the other side of the coin, we've got to think about our primary forms of communication when we deal with our dogs as humans. So, the three primary forms of communication that we do, or we use, firstly, is body language. Okay, we offer body language. Now, as a human race, we're pretty crap at reading body language these days, mainly because we're too busy texting and we're not actually watching people, or we use on the phone, etc. But body language is still a very much of a primary form of communication, the way we communicate with each other, as in me communicating with you, or the way that we communicate with our dogs. Secondly, eye contact. Again, you know full well that if you're talking to somebody and they're looking around and not paying attention to you, the likelihood is you're starting to get a little bit annoyed, thinking, why aren't you listening to me? But if you try and get that person's attention and they look directly at you, you know they're engaged with you, and that encourages you to want to talk to them more and enjoy that conversation. So eye contact, again, for us is a primary form of communication that we rely on. And thirdly, it's talking. We waffle on a lot, and we love the sounds of our voice. We talk all the time. We talk when we really don't need to a lot of the time. And this is something that I witness quite a lot with clients, especially with behavioural issues, where we just talk at the dog so much that, to be honest, they switch off. Or they try and figure out what they're on about, but whatever you're saying using your mouth doesn't match what your body language says, but because the body language is a primary form of communication, they go with that. So talking is another one of our primary forms of communication. So if we are going to use our voice, what I want to do is, and the other trainers, we want to try and teach you how to use that appropriately in a way that your dog understands. So when we do talk about the communication, we make sure that we put those in order so the dog gets the best opportunity to learn what you want them to do. Now, the interesting thing is physical touch isn't a primary form of communication for us as humans. Now, it used to be many, many years ago, but we've kind of conditioned ourselves not to use it as much. Likely it is you only touch people when they're not listening. Now, if somebody's got hard of hearing, you might touch them and then get their attention and then use body language and sign language. If you've got, if you're in a club or a pub or a noisy environment and you're trying to get somebody's attention, you'll probably tap them on the shoulder to get their attention first. Then you can spend the night shouting at them. And so, as you can see, physical touch isn't really a primary form of communication for us. If you think about it, when your dog's on the lead and it's not listening to you, what do? Now, even those of you who are into positive-only training, you will still give a little tug on the lead because that's a natural thing for us to do. It's a condition or it's an habituation that we've learned, and basically this is what we do. It's just out of habit. If you're not listening, I yank on the lead. It might be the slightest little touch, but it's still physical touch. Okay, or you might poke your dog or whatever it is you might do. So physical touch is not a primary form of communication, but we will use it all the time in training or in your training. What we'll try and do is discourage that, and we'll explain why that's so important during the course. So when we introduce a new behavior, we want to give the verbal information in a particular way. All right, so basically what we do is, because verbal information, as in us speaking, isn't a primary form of communication for the dog really isn't going to pay that much attention to it. But what we do want is for it to be a component part of the pattern of information that we give the dog. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to give the verbal cue, i.e. sit, then we're going to offer the hand signal, which was your body language, and initially it's going to be luring. So in certain circumstances, we may not put the word in first until we're happy the dog understands the body movement. And they'll only take 2 or 3 options. Usually the one that we talk about is down. Some dogs really don't like laying down. And so we will try and make sure the dog's body is able to completely exercise first before we start putting the word before. Because the last thing we want to do is put the word in there and then reward a different behavior that we don't want to touch into that noise. So that's probably the example where we may kind of withhold the verbal cue initially. But most of your pups, even pups or adult dogs, even puppies have probably already know how to sit. You've probably held the food, held it up, looked at the dog, and they've sat their bum on the floor, and you think, yeah, I've trained my dog to sit. So the sit will probably use it straight away, and quite a lot of other exercises as well. But the whole idea of the information of the cue is we want to put that word at the beginning first, then we offer the behavior that encourages the physical behavior. So that'll be the lure or the bribe with a hand signal. Then the behavior occurs and we mark the behavior as being correct, then we reward the dog. So basically it will be verbal cue, physical cue, behavior, then we give the verbal marker, then the physical marker of handing the food over. So it's word, action, okay? And that's basically the pattern that we're going to try and input the information into the dog. Now, some of you might be wondering why that's so important. Well, basically, when it comes to dogs are pattern learning behaviors, same as us really. And what we want to do is, if you have a look at your dog at home, there are probably patterns that you build without thinking about it. And you think, why is he doing that? Or why is she doing that? The likelihood is you've built a pattern of behavior that's caused that end result. So that's usually the best way to look at it. So what we want to do is we want to look at noise, action, noise, action. Now the interesting thing is, when you look at human patterns and how we learn patterns, whenever we talk to clients about this type of communication, and especially in like the live inductions and that kind of stuff, one of the first questions I ask is, what comes after thunder? And a lot of people will say lightning. Now, technically, lightning comes first, then you hear thunder. So if you think about it, you see the lightning, then you wait and listen for the thunder. But whenever you talk about it, everyone says thunder and lightning. They never say lightning and thunder. So that's a pattern. Now, if you're not thinking about it and somebody catches you off guard and you just go, what comes after thunder? Most people go, lightning. You know, we see game shows all the time where they're asking these questions and people just, because they rush in, they quickly say what the pattern that they're used to learning. And that's the pattern that we've built, thunder and lightning. But actually that's incorrect. So what we want to look at is build that pattern in the dog's mind. I hear that noise, you do that hand signal, this is what I do. I hear that noise, you do the hand signal, this is what I do. I hear that noise, you do the hand signal, this is what I do. I hear that noise. Right, okay, so over the last couple of days, you've said that, then you've always done this. So that, the noise that you're making, must mean that hand signal which wants me to sit. And that's how you start pairing the word sit, and eventually the dog learns that that word that you say means put my bum on the floor. And basically that's the pattern we're trying to build in the dog's mind. And we'll talk more about that while you're going through the course, and obviously demonstrating it as well. So it works really well, okay? And when I talk to you about introducing the marker, you'll see how that pattern works for that as well, okay? So make sure that when you're doing the training, it's always verbal cue, visual cue, behavior in that order. So during the course, we're going to teach your dog some core skills that will help them get through their life and help deal with some unwanted behaviors, etc. And we'll talk about that in more detail during the course. But one of the first things we're going to cover on the training is attention to name. And we'll talk about this later on, because I'm going to ask you to practice this prior to your first class with the dogs. So attention to name, okay? Basically, we want our dog to respond to its name. And the reason we do that is because if you've not got your dog's attention, then you can't teach them anything. All right? Now, the thing about the name is, a dog's name is not its name, as in human names. All right? Human names, they're on our birth certificate, passport, driving license, and they're pretty hard to change. Okay? But on average, we can probably change your dog's name in about 20 minutes, quite successfully as well. And the reason for that is, the dog's name is not its identity like ours is. The dog's name is just a noise. And the noise has been taught to respond to it through using positive reinforcement. So you'll say, Fifi, good girl, there's a good girl. Fifi, there's a good girl. Fifi, oh, who's a good girl? So suddenly the dog thinks, whenever you say that really weird noise, Fifi, if I look at you, that seems to make you happy, and I get a treat. So from now on, I'm going to start listening to that funny noise. Now, that's how we start getting that attention. And the other thing to think about with the name is, it has to mean something. And basically what I want you to think about is, when you call your dog's name, all you want them to do is look at you. It's not a recall cue, because there are times when you're not going to want your dog to recall to you, okay? There may be some dangers that you don't want them to run through, but you still need to get their attention to be able to ask them to do something, okay? So what we want to do is make sure that the dog learns that the name is just purely there for them to listen to you, and it's a bit like your kids, isn't it? Okay, so it's George, what? That's basically what you want. I call your name, you ask me what I want, now I give you some information. Because that way I know you're listening to me. Okay? And again, remember, we keep emphasizing this throughout the course. If your dog's not looking at you, then they're not listening to you. So don't waste your effort giving them some information at that point. Okay, so attention to name. That's one of the first things we're going to look at. Now, remember, if you're teaching the name using positive reinforcement, one thing you have to try and get away from doing is telling your dog off using its name. Because if you tell your dog off using its name, you're starting to add a negative association to it, or a punishing association to it. So you've got to be careful with this, guys. I know it's hard, especially those of you who've got pups, and pups tend to want to do all the things they shouldn't want to do and seem to have loads of fun doing it, and they'll push your buttons and really pull on your strings. It's really important that you try not to tell them off using their name. It has to be a positive association, okay? When you tell them off, if you decide to give them a verbal correction, then make sure it's just you're looking at them, you touch them if you need to, but make sure that you don't use their name. They still know you're talking to them. You don't need to use their name. All right? If you think about it, if I called your name and you responded to me consistently, and every time you responded to me, I told you something crappy about yourself, very quickly you'd stop listening. So always think about that when you're telling dogs off using their name. So next exercise we'll introduce is the hand touch. And like I said, at the end of this video, I'll show you a couple of little examples with Ace, just to show you the kind of exercises that I want you to work on. And then we'll go through them in more detail with demonstrations each week as we go through the course. So touch, hand touch. Basically, we use the hand touch as a target. Now, all I want my dog to do is target my hands. Gives me a nice, easy, quick thing that I can use. I've always got them with me. And also, the bonus with this, guys, is it makes my hands positive. Okay, so another thing you've got to try and refrain from doing is smacking or cracking your dog with your hands. It's these are supposed to be positive all times. You know, your dog might have an injury and you have to carry them to the vets or touch them and check them out. The last thing you want is your dog thinking, you know, you're going to try and hurt me, because they're in that defensive state of mind if they're in pain. So the likelihood is they'll see these as a negative. So make sure you don't crack your dogs, or hit them. You don't need to. These should always be positive. So basically, we're going to teach the dog to target the hand. Okay, and what you can do is give your dogs a target to help you with your bribe and rewarding as well. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the course. The next exercise, obviously, is one of the basic exercises, is sit. Now, those of you doing the rookie course, the likelihood is at that age you're probably already going to sit. Even most of the puppies probably know how to sit. The whole idea of this is not to teach you how to teach your dog to sit if they're already sitting. All we're trying to do is work on the clarity of the information, because this is a foundational training course. These are your foundations. If you get your foundations wrong, when you start, if any of you decide to then progress to the higher level classes, then once we start making things more difficult, if your foundations haven't been taught properly, it's going to cause you a problem and the whole thing's going to collapse. So even though you might think that your dog knows how to sit, listen to the examples, have a go at them. And I'm not saying change it if it's working, because that's not an issue for us. It's not an ego trip. If it's working, it's working. I don't change things for the sake of it. But we want to make sure that your information is clear and concise. Okay? So we'll teach them how to sit. Now, sit is a controlled position. It's a stationary position. And if you do it right, you can utilize this for different kind of stress issues. The same as a lot of the other exercises that we're going to do. Then we're going to teach you a place or a bed cue. This is really important to teach your dog how to settle. Now, you might like going to pubs, you might like going to coffee shops or stuff like that, or some of you may be coming to us for class, actually group classes. Well, we utilize this during class because there are times when the trainer has to talk to you and give you some instruction, or we'll discuss certain issues that people come up with. Then we want the dog to settle and relax, not keep bugging you for attention all the time so you can't listen. But also, we don't want them barking and eyeballing all the other dogs in the class either. So it gives you a really good opportunity to teach your dog how to relax and settle, and ensure that they take those rest periods that they need that help remove emotional stress out of their system. Okay, so the place and bed exercise is one of the ones that we'll be covering. Then we're going to teach you a lay down exercise, or a down cue. So basically, this is where we get the dog to drop to the floor. Okay, again, it's a really good exercise to learn. It's just some basic positional control. Again, if you want your dog to settle, one of the best positions to be in is a lay down position. And there are some dogs that will struggle with this. You know, we've got loads of dogs that come to classes, and loads of clients that I've worked with over the years, that certain breeds have problems with this. And the interesting thing is, it doesn't really matter that you take them home, they lay down. Why does my dog lay down? Because when you're asking them to lay down as a cue, it's a completely different thing. And probably the body movement that you're encouraging is different to what they would normally use at home. Other dogs have issues with laying down because of aches and pains. You know, your puppies and your teenage dogs are going through growing spurts. So they're probably aching, or they're in discomfort. So that might be another reason why they don't like laying down in the way that you're trying to show them. So don't get out of bed over it if your dog is struggling with the down. Just keep consistent with it, and make sure that the information's clear and concise. And eventually you'll get what you're looking for. But we can talk about that again throughout the course. We encourage people to upload videos if they're having problems, and we can give you feedback on that. All right, and we'll talk about that more again later as well. So the laying down is another exercise that we cover. Then we cover the recall. Now, we do quite a few things on the course to help with recall training, but one of the most foundational things is that engagement, because you want your dog to come back and want to come back. Most people use a recall to stop the dog's fun. So there may be a dog that you're not sure of, or you don't want your dog running up to play with. So you call it back, put it back on the lead. There may be, you might have a dog that jumps up and jumps on people. So you might want to call your dog back so it doesn't run up to a person. You may be getting close to the end of your walk, getting to the car park where your car is, or you're getting towards home. Then you call your dog back and put it on the lead. All of these associations are quite negative to the dog. And it's like, well, I don't really want to come back because you're going to spoil my fun. What we try to do is make the recall a game whereby the dog comes back to play a game as well. So it's coming back for a positive purpose, not just for you to spoil the fun of the dog. So there's a couple of games that we play throughout the course And we vary it and offer distractions, etc., to help you develop your recall training. It's not just a classical obedience type recall where you leave your dog in a sit, walk away, and then recall to them sat in front of you. That is something that we progress to because it's a really good exercise for focus, but we also build the foundational elements of it as well to ensure the dog wants to be with you. We then, because part of the engagement exercise is playing with toys, one of the other things that we build into the training is teaching your dog to let go of things. Now this becomes really important. If you can teach your dog to let go of things in play, then the leave it, drop, give, thank you, all of those cues that you use to get your dog to spit something out of their mouth becomes a conditioned behavior and a habitual behavior. So when you say out, then the dog goes because that's what you've taught it. But you've taught it in games. So there's a reason for letting go to encourage the game to carry on. What a lot of you will probably be trying to do is get your dog to let go of things because it's nicked your underwear off the radiator, it's nicked your socks out of your box or your drawer, it's nicked the TV remote or whatever it might, or your vape machine if you're into that kind of thing. So there are loads of reasons why we'd suddenly quickly try and grab hold of the dog and then tell it to leave it, and then we make that actual information quite negative and punishing. So the dog thinks, do you know what, I'm not coming anywhere near you when I've got something in my mouth because you're going to try and grab it and I'll lose it, which must mean that this is really, really rewarding or it's really worth a lot, so you want it. So we tend to put a lot of value on stuff when we didn't really need to, and that causes a major problem. So part of the games that we do is teaching your dog how to let go and drop things, and we show you elements and different ways of doing that throughout the course. Then we introduce impulse control. Impulse control is really important to understand because all your dogs have genetic drives. Depending on what breed you've got, there will be particularly predetermined genetic drives in your dog. What we want to do is try and help them control that a little bit. And there are games that we play to try and help that. There are loads of games out there that can help you with impulse control. And we'll cover a few of those in class and on other training videos as well. Then we're going to teach your dog a settle cue or a stay cue. So basically we don't use the word stay, and I'll explain that in a second, but the aim of the stay or settle behavior is teaching your dog to relax and remain in a stationary position for a period of time. Because obviously we're going to use marker training, your dog will generally, initially when we start it, will sit, then you'll say yes, dog gets up. So the dog starts building a pattern that I sit, then you suddenly give me a treat. Then what happens then is if you start waiting a little bit, the dog starts questioning whether or not that was actually what you wanted it to do because it's not had a quick reward. Then we have to teach them how to hold that for a period of time. And that's basically what we're going to do. Now, as I said just now, we don't use the word stay. I don't use the word wait. Not in obedience style training. And there's a reason for that. Now, I'm not saying those of you who use the word stay and wait are doing it wrong. I would ask you the question, do you actually need it? But we generally don't teach that because personally I feel that the words stay and wait are, in relation to stationary positions, are basically unnecessary, wasteful and kind of redundant cues, because you're asking your dog to learn the meaning of something that they don't really need. And I'll explain this now. So if I ask my dog to sit, think about it, what are we asking your dog to do? Well, I'm asking him to put his bum on the floor. That's what I want. And unless I tell her anything else, I don't want to move him, okay? So if he does sit, then I mark that behavior. Then I want her to stay there for a period of time. So I ask her to sit. And I wait. Am I asking any more of my dog? No, because I've not given him any other information. So if I say sit, and I just take a step back, have I said to him, I want him to follow me? No. So really, she shouldn't follow me. She should stay in the sit. So basically, what I want my dog to do is learn that if I say sit, and I don't give you any other information, all I want you to do is sit. And it's the same with the down, it's the same with the heel work, all of that kind of stuff. So what we'll try and do is show you how you can do these exercises without necessarily inputting another word, which they don't understand, and try and teach them to understand it. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever watched Charlie Brown or Snoopy, whatever the cartoons are called. If you have, or even YouTube it and have a look at any of the videos, what I want you to do is have a look at Charlie Brown's teacher and listen to what she does. When she talks, that's basically what you sound like to your dog. So basically, if you ever listen to Charlie Brown's teacher, she basically sounds wah, 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 wah. And that's basically when you first start talking to your dog, using words you've never associated with any behavior, that's basically all your dog hears. So why are we adding another word that we then have to try and explain to the dog what it means? Now, I understand the methodology behind it and why people say stay, because stay means remain stationary. Now, the problem is, though, people are very inconsistent with the way they train that as well. Because the word stay should mean remain where you are until I rejoin you. But there are so many people that will say stay, then ask the dog to do something. Stay, then release them for food. Stay, then call them out of a door. So actually the word stay doesn't mean stay where you are until I come back to you. It means a load of different things. But do you know what? Sit just means sit. Nothing else. So why confuse the situation with the word stay? Anyway, so that's what we're going to try and include with you. That said, if at home you want to put the word stay in and you think your dog knows it, then by all means, if that's what you want to do, not a problem at all. Just bearing in mind that you are trying to add another bit of information the dog doesn't really need, and it's another bit of information. You've got to teach them what it means. Okay. Finally, one of the other exercises we're going to teach you is an introduction to heel work. Now, the reason I said introduction to heel work is by the end of this course, you won't have perfect heel work. Okay, getting your dog to focus at you in the heel position is really time consuming. Some dogs will really stick to this really well. Some other dogs don't particularly like doing it and find it difficult to get to the hang of it. Usually it's because of the information the owners give, and obviously that's what we're going to work on. So what is heel work? Well, basically heel work is not teaching your dog not to pull on a lead. Okay, it is not loose lead walking, and we'll go into this in more detail during your sessions, okay, as the weeks go on. But just to give you an idea, heel work is not pulling on the lead. Obviously, to do heel work properly, then the lead must be slack, or should be slack, but it's not teaching dog not to pull. Relaxed heel work, or should I say relaxed lead walking, is your dog just walking roughly around you without pulling on the lead. That's basically all it is. So apart from not pulling on a lead, you're not really asking anything else of your dog. Okay? Heel work is completely different. Heel work is a focus exercise. It requires your dog to focus on you. And I'll tell you why we introduce this into our training. There are so many issues for dogs around these days. There are so many fearful things that cause stress and anxiety, and there are so many things that distract the dogs. What we want to try and do is find a way you've been able to walk past things that either distract your dog or scare your dog or anything like that in a way that encourages them to have a bit of fun with you. Heel work is a really good way of doing that. So the way we teach heel work is, I want your leg next to my leg and you look at me. Okay, and what we have to do first of all, we introduce how to get your dog in that position. No different to the way we teach your dog how to get into a sit or how do we get into a down. We teach the dog how to get into the heel position. Then we'll then teach them how to stay there while we're walking. The thing about heel work is you have to remember that you can't expect your dog to do this for a long time. All right, and the reason for that is it requires an element of attention. Now, in competition work, my dogs used to have to do it for a long period of time, but that took a lot of years of practicing and a lot of day-to-day practice and training. Obviously, we want to try and put something in that you can use pretty quickly to help your dog cope with this, but it's only for short periods of time. Okay, so please don't think that the heel work is going to stop your dog from pulling. We will discuss loose lead walking and work on how to build on that, and we really go into it in a bit more depth in the deputy dog classes as well, and the online training classes for those courses as well. So, but we will give an introduction as to how to help with your pulling on the lead while we're doing this course. So those are the kind of exercises we're going to cover. Now, another question for you to think about is who actually trains your dog when you're doing this training? All I would say is if you're doing it as a family or you're doing it as a group, make sure the person holding the lead trains the dog. And the only reason for that is practicality. When you're out on the road or you're out in the field, whoever's holding the dog usually is the one you want the dog to listen to. So don't have somebody holding the lead and then the opposite person giving the instructions, because really that's not the way it would work in the real world, so try not to do that now. If you're practicing these at home in the garden, then the likelihood is you won't need your dog on the lead, okay? If you're going to practice these exercises when you're out and about in a park or in a field, then I would advise that you have your dog on the lead so you control the environment. But if you're doing this at home, then you get the freedom of having your dog off the lead. However, you will need to make sure you're interested, because if you're not, then the dog will wander off and do its own thing, okay? And again, that's why this whole course is about making you Disneyland. So, as a dog trainer, which is what we're trying to help you be, we have to give you some skills. So, there are some skills that you need to develop to make sure you get the best out of your dog. Firstly, one of the skills you need is patience. Now, some would say this isn't a skill, this is a characteristic that some people have or don't have. And you're right, but you can teach yourself to be patient in relation to not getting annoyed when your dog doesn't do it. Remember, these dogs don't speak your language, and you're asking them to adhere to what you say in your language. So have a bit of patience. Some dogs learn differently to others. Some dogs learn quicker than others. Now, if you think that you've got a dog that's learning a bit slower, take a bit of joy in knowing the fact that those people who have the quicker learning dogs, that dog is going to learn the negative or the bad behavior much quicker than your dog will, okay? So don't forget that. So take your time, be patient, and we'll get to the end of this. Consistency, that's definitely a skill. You have to be consistent with your information. If you're not consistent, then what happens is you change the rules of the game over and over again. Not only does that prevent your dog from learning, but it also causes unnecessary stress in the dog's mind, okay? Because basically, all your dog is ever asking you is, how do I get what I want? And while you're engaging with your dog will learn that the whole idea of this game is for you to give him a treat or give him a reward, okay? Now, what she'll be asking is consistently is, how do I get you to give me that toy or that treat? Your job is to give them that information, okay? And finally, timing. Timing is really important, all right? Timing is so important that if you get your timing wrong, you'll probably end up training something you completely didn't want to train, okay? So we will work on your timing quite a lot, and the timing of your marker is really important. So throughout the course, we will continually work on making sure that your timing is right. So need to make sure that you get that information over at the right time. Unfortunately, guys, everybody is different. We all learn differently. Some people will be pretty skillful at the way that they give information, the way they handle dogs, and the way they give their timing. Other people aren't as gifted in relation to that. That doesn't mean you can't train your dog. It just means you may need a little bit more patience with both yourself and your dog. All right, and don't get out of bed over it. Remember, the whole idea of this is to have loads of fun. All right. So not long, get my words out. Not long now before we start training for the first time with your dog. So a couple of things for you to remember beforehand. Firstly, make sure your dog is toileted. Make sure you take him out for a wee and a poo before you start this training. You want the dog's mind on the training, not on where do I have my next pee or a poop. That said, remember, if you're training puppies, then exactly the same way as you would do your house training, do a little bit, stop, take them out in the garden or in the field, let them have a piddle and a poop, reward that behavior. Try and avoid opportunities where they have accidents, especially if you're doing this in your home, okay? A bit of psychological and physical stimulation will cause your pup to need to want to empty itself in both ends. So make sure you give them the opportunity to go away. And during the course, we will give you opportunities for you to pause the video and go and let your dog have a little bit of a poo or a peep. A poo or a peep, a poo or a pee. So make sure you take the opportunity to do that, okay? Collars and harnesses. Now, really, it's up to you. You can wear whatever you want, and you can even put it on your dog. I have no preference. All I would say is sometimes certain equipment does kind of cause a few problems for your trainer. It can inhibit you from getting where you want to be as much as you can. Personally, use what works for you and your dog. All right. If you feel that you're having a problem with whatever you're using on your dog, then drop us a video, let us have a look at it, and we'll give you some feedback. If we think that the equipment that you're using or the collar or harness that you're using is hindering your training, then we'll let you know. Okay. There's no prescribed equipment to use for this. Some people use flat collars, some people use check chains, some people use flat half check collars, some people use slip leads, some people just clip onto a harness or clip onto a flat collar. It doesn't really matter. All I would say is, if you're using a puppy, don't use some of the harsh training collars, because I'm not being funny, if you've got to that point where you need that kind of equipment on your pup, then these classes aren't for you. You probably need to look more towards one-to-one training with a training specialist. Okay. So always think about the kind of collar or harness that you're going to be utilizing. If you're doing this training on lead, you may be doing it off lead if you're doing it at home. Okay, and it won't be such a major issue. Leads, if you are using a lead, use a clip-on lead or a slip lead or something like that. You're wanting it around about 3 to 4 foot long. All right. If you've got a slightly long line, then that's fine, especially when we're doing the recall type stuff. But usually about a 3 to 4 foot lead would be enough for you to complete this training. All I would say is don't use a retractable lead. And the reason we don't want to use a retractable lead is they're very, very awkward, and usually they're quite heavy things. And if you drop that on your dog's head, it's not exactly a positive reinforcement, is it? And you want your dog to enjoy this training. So try and use a fixed lead of some sort that allows you to a bit of flexibility with moving it around your hands. Okay. Now we're going to be using rewards, and throughout that we'll be using treats, toys, and so it's really important to understand what kind of things you should be using. Okay. So we're going to discuss now the kind of stuff that you need to look at in relation to that. And also what we're going to do is discuss how you're going to carry those things. Okay? So there are loads of different things you can use. So we'll start off with treats. So depending on what kind of dietary needs your dogs are at, there are loads of different types of treats out there that you can use. You can use more fresh stuff like your dried sprats, fish products. If your dog is on raw food, you maybe need to be careful about the kind of treats that you use in relation to that. So your more natural products like your sprats, your liver cake, all those kind of things. Or you've got your more generally produced, mass-produced kind of treats like these. You've even got grain-free treats. It really doesn't matter what you use. All I would say is in relation to the treats, make sure that you use something that your dog sees as high value. You're going to be asking a lot more of your dog than you would normally, so make sure that the treat is high value. Okay? People use things like mature cheddar, chicken, ham, cocktail sausages, liver, loads of different stuff really. You've got pizzles, you've got sprats. Just really, you'll find what works for your dog. Okay, all I would say is whatever you decide to use, make sure it's cut about the size of your little fingernail. The thing is, the dog needs to know it's in its mouth, but it mustn't take a week to eat it, otherwise you kind of lose that consistency with your training. So make sure that it's something that your dog likes. And remember, unfortunately, dog food packaging is designed to encourage the human to buy it. Just because you like the look of it and you like the smell of it doesn't mean that your dog is going to like the look of it and like the smell of it. So what I would suggest is you find what works for your dog, not for you. Okay, so those kind of treats. Once you decide what you want with your treats, then what I would look at is how you're going to hold the treats and what are you going to put them in. And I've just got a treat bag over here just to show. So with my training, I tend to use these clip-on treat bags. Okay, really easy to use. You fill them with your treats, whatever kind of treats it is, and you can have them. You can have them there, have them in the middle of your back, so you can use both hands, or on the left, depending on which side is your dominant hand. These are great because you've got these tie rips. You have ones that have like magnetic clips, zippers. Just find something that allows you to put your treats in. You can take them off your belt, chuck them in the corner, and there's not a problem. You can put treats in your pocket if you want to, or in a plastic bag that you seal up. All I would say is, make sure you remember the treats are in there. Don't put the treats in with your car keys, especially if you're using hot dog, sausage and squidgy kind of treats. If you're using your raw food to treat your dog, then I would suggest definitely don't put that in your pockets. But really just use what works for you, okay? It just needs to be easily accessible and something that you can have on you for when you need it. All right, so that's kind of things to put your treats in. Finally, we need to look at toys. Now, when we talk about toys, we want something that your dog enjoys playing with, okay? Now, whenever we encourage people to class using toys, we're always interested to see the kind of toys that they bring. Now, what we like to think about is tug toys. Things that move, engage your dog's prey drive. The tug toys are great. Despite what anybody says, playing tug with your dog does not turn it into a dominant animal that's going to rip your throat out while you're watching evening TV, okay? Tug toys, they're part of a game, and your job is just to teach your dog the rules of the game. Once you've taught the dog the rules of the game and know how far you can push your dog, then you ain't going to have a problem. So look at toys that move. Things, you know, especially for puppies, something that's a bit softer for them to grab hold of, because remember, they're going through teething. You don't want to be making it too harsh and uncomfortable for them to grab hold of. Something that you can move around and flap about, okay? And we'll teach you how to play and engage with dogs, because you need to do that in a particular way to get the best out of your dog. But try and find a toy that is kind of allows you to play tug. Some dogs aren't that bothered about tugging, so you may need to find something else that helps you get your dog's attention. Now, squeaky toys, absolutely brilliant. There's some dogs that go absolutely mental for toys that squeak. Now, these kind of toys are brilliant. You can use them, they flap about a bit. You can even grab hold of them so the dogs can tug. So these are great, and they get that little bit of attention from your dog if you need it. One thing about these with all kind of squeaky toys, if you leave them with your dog, the likelihood is the squeaking can last long. The whole idea of any of these engagement toys is you play with them, then when you finish the game, it goes away, and your dog doesn't see it again until you engage with it. Okay, so make sure that's how you use it. So basically, you're looking at a squeaky toy if you want one. Other thing is, these little toys are brilliant. They're called flirt poles. You can get ones that extend out, so you can put them in your pocket to take them to the local park, or you can get the more fixed base. And basically, all they are is a cat toy for dogs. And they're on a metal, either plastic or metal bar, and then you've got this bit of bungee with a tug toy on the end. And you can use these flirt poles. They're absolutely brilliant for engagement, especially at times when you can't get out and take your dog for a walk. These are awesome toys to use to burn a bit of energy on your dog in the garden, so you don't need to keep throwing a ball back and forth the garden and digging up your garden. So really important to have a look at the kind of toys that you use, guys, and make sure that they're something that your dog wants to play with. Okay, if you have any problems, again, upload a video or email us with some questions in relation to this to find out what's best for your dog. So a couple of things for you to do now before your first class with your dog next week. Okay, so what I want you to think about is, make sure you've signed your training agreement. Go onto your portal. If you're having any problems finding your training agreement, contact the office and they'll have a chat with you and help you find your training agreement and sign it. Make sure you sign this, because we can't continue with the training otherwise. What I want you to do is practice the yes. We want the dog to understand that the yes means a reward's coming. So it's called charging the marker, okay? So basically what you're going to do is you're going to have a handful of treats or a treat pouch full of treats, and what you're going to do is you're going to say yes. Then you're going to give your dog a treat. Then you're going to say yes. Then give your dog a treat. Then yes, give your dog a treat. Yes, give your dog a treat. Yes, give your dog a treat. Notice the pattern of behavior, pattern of information. The word yes, then the information that says it's coming. The word yes, then the body language that says it's coming, okay? Have a clear gap between yes, treat, yes, treat. Now, what I would suggest is you do this for about 20 to 30 repetitions. Yes, 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 okay? Then stop. Give them a couple of seconds breather, then do it again for another 10 to 20 repetitions. After that, just wait. Wait until your dog gets distracted or looks away, then say yes. If they suddenly break their neck to look at you, you now know that your dog's starting to associate the fact that whenever you say yes, a treat's coming. You do exactly the same if you're doing clicker training. So if you've got a clicker, you click, then give a treat. Click, give it a treat. Exactly the same, okay? If your dog doesn't look around, then the likelihood is you need to go back through that cycle again, all right, because they haven't quite made that association. So that's how you charge the marker. Next, we want to practice the name game. The name game is really important, again, to make sure your dog is responding to its name. So what I want you to do is firstly charge the marker so the dog understands that. Now what I want you to do is start saying your dog's name. Now remember, say it in an inviting, positive tone of voice. So you call your dog's name, so it's Fifi. Then remember, all you're looking for is that attention. So once your dog turns and looks at you, you want to mark that behavior. This is where your timing comes important. So I call my dog's name, Fifi. She stops doing whatever she's doing and looks at me. Yes, then give her a treat. Okay? Then remember that part, name, action, word, reward. Okay? So it's Fifi. She stops doing whatever she's doing and looks at me. Yes, that's what I like. Here's a treat. Okay? And that's how you build the attention to name. And get into the habit of doing that quite a lot. Now, obviously, I said that attention to name isn't a recall. But once your dog knows that the word yes means food's coming, your dog will naturally run to you. Okay? But that doesn't mean you've now built a recall. It just means the dog is coming in for that treat. Now, if you want to, you can throw the treat to them. It doesn't really matter, as long as you've said the word yes. So practice the attention to name game. Okay? Make sure you have a selection of high value treats for your dog ready for the training. Okay, you need all these because rather than you having to keep stopping the video and finding something that works, so make sure you have a good selection of treats. Have a tug toy or a high value toy ready so we can build that association up with the training. Okay, so now I'm just going to get Ace out and I'll show you how some of these exercises are put in place just to give you an idea, and we'll then work on from there. Hi guys, so this is Ace. He's my Malinois. As promised, he's going to help me just demonstrate to you some of the exercises we just spoke about earlier. The first exercise we're going to look at is charging a marker. All right, so basically I want the dog to learn that the word YES means that I'm going to give him treats. Now he already knows what the marker word means, but I just want to demonstrate to you how to build this association. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. So we're going to say it for about 30 repetitions. I'm not going to do 30 repetitions, but you want to be doing this for about 30 repetitions. So all I'm going to say is the word, then have a slight gap, then offer the food. It has to remember that information. Verbal cue, physical cue, behavior. But all I want to do is teach him that I make that funny noise, then I offer food, and that's the pattern I'm trying to build. So all I'm going to do is go, yes, then offer the food. Okay? Yes, then offer the food. And only a split second break. Yes, then offer the food. Watch his tail go the minute I say the word yes, offer the food. Yes, offer the food. So he's already got that anticipation. Yes, offer the food. Even before I even move. Okay? So, say tail, it's a bit of a stump really. But that's all you're going to do. So you're going to do this for about 30 repetitions. Yes. Now, notice I'm not asking him to do anything. Yes. 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 And that's all you're doing. So do that for about 30 repetitions. Then you want to have a bit of a breather for a couple of minutes. Then you want to do it for another 20 repetitions. Then what I want you to do is just let your dog wander off. Okay? And you're just going to wait until they get distracted. And then you're going to say the magic word. And if they suddenly break their neck to look at you, then you know that they've made the association. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. Now, I'm just going to keep talking to you while I wait for him to look away, so I can just demonstrate to you the association. The next one I'm going to do is then the attention to name game. Okay? And this is what I want you to work on before your first class. So basically, that's what we're going to look at. Yes. There we are. See what I mean by that interaction? So straight away, neck almost broke to say, hey, where's my food? So that's how you're going to associate or charge the marker. You do exactly the same if you decide to use a clicker. All you do is use a click, reward, click, reward. Okay? So the next one is the name game. So remember, the name is purely attention to me when I call your name, nothing else. Now, Ace will probably run to me because he knows the minute he looks at me, he's going to get a marker and a reward. Obviously, he's a lot more advanced, so as we go through the training, I call his name, then I ask him to do something else, and that can be at a distance. So basically, because I'm demonstrating this really close up, he's probably going to run to me. So all I'm going to do is call his name. Ace, Yes. Now you didn't see what he was doing there because he's kind of off shot. So I'll just wait for him to get distracted again. Ace? Yes. Remember, between 1.5 seconds. All right? That's what you want. What you want to remember is your dog lives in a 1 to 3 second world. Whenever you reward or reinforce a behavior, the dog reflects on what happened 1 to 3 seconds before that. Okay? And whatever he was doing or she was doing, Ace? Yes. 1 to 3 seconds before you reinforced, that's what you reinforced. Okay? So always remember that timing is really important, as we mentioned earlier. Okay? So again, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw the treat away, get his attention. Ace? Yes. Now, what I want you to notice now is I'm not going to have any treats in my hand. So I'm going to throw the one treat away. Then I'm not going to go to my treat pouch until I've said the word yes. Okay? So I'll throw the treat away, get his distraction. Ace? Yes. Now the treat's still over there, but he's a bit stupid. Go find it. So just wait for him to find that. Ace? Yes. There we are. So that's how you do your attention to name. So at first, if your dog doesn't know its name, then the likelihood is you're not going to get that straight away. But really make it nice and positive and a really good association with that. Okay? And that's all we're trying to do. So again, one more time. I'll wait till he's distracted. He's now going to come in because he knows I've suddenly stopped talking. So obviously Dad's going to ask him to do something. So remember, dogs are optimistic. They always think that there's a good chance they're going to be able to bully us into giving them some information. So we're just going to wait. Ace? Yes. And that's when you know your dog understands its name. Okay? Now remember, only ever say the name in a positive tone of voice. Bloody hell. Don't stand on your dog. Don't tell your dog off using its name, because obviously then you have a negative association with that. And remember, if I was to call your name and you consistently responded to it, and then I told you something crappy about yourself, you'd very quickly stop answering. So try not to tell your dog off using its name. Okay, so now we're going to do the send the dog to the mat or place exercise. Now I'm not going to use the word bed. The reason being is when I say bed to him, he goes to his crate. This is a mat that he's not used to going to, so I'm going to use the word mat. You can use place if you want, but place is very similar to ace, so I don't want to use that. So I'm going to try and use mat. All I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to lure him to that mat, okay? And I'm going to do that by holding a treat under my thumb in the palm of my hand, and then I'm going to draw him onto the mat. Once all 4 feet are on the mat, I'm going to say yes and reward, okay? So it's just an introductory to this exercise, guys. We're not going to go too far with it. It's just so you've got some basics in place for when you start the second week of your course with your dog, okay? Ace, come. Yes, good, okay. So again, remember, make sure he's looking at you, so call his name. If he's looking at you already, then don't bother calling her name because she's already looking at you. So if he's looking at me, I'm not going to call his name. Then I'm going to give the word mat just before I lure him, not at the same time, because I want him to listen to the word, then see the body movement, okay? So, mat, yes. I'm just going to draw him away so I can reset it, because he's a bit of a brute. And again, mat, yes. That's all I'm doing is moving him onto the mat, okay? Mat, nope. So he's kind of not focusing a little bit. Mat, yes. Yeah. Mat, yes. That's all I'm doing. Again, Ace. Mat, yes. Now, I'm going to get him to follow me now without a bribe. So once your dog can do this 8 times in a row without getting it wrong, you want to start moving it on a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and see if I can get him there by showing him my hand, but no food in it, and then mark it, then go to my treat pouch to give him a treat. Ace? Good. Mat? Yes. Good. Okay. Mat? Yes. Good. Now, sometimes you can feed him, in position so they get actual food on the mat. Yes? So again, no bribe in the hand. Mat. Yes. So sometimes if you're going to do it that way, then make sure you've got another treat to throw away to get them away from the mat. So again, buddy. Mat. Yes. Good boy. Okay guys, so just before we finish, I'm just going to use Ace to demonstrate the heel exercise. Remember we talked about it, that you're going to try and teach your dog to stay next to your leg and look at you, which will give you a little bit of extra control to help them work through stressful or distracting times, okay? So the aim is leg next to me and look at me when I say the heel, okay? Now, obviously, by the end of your course, your dog's not going to, well, depends on how much work you put in actually, but most of your dogs aren't going to be at this level. Don't worry about it. It just gives you an idea of where you can push your training if you carry on with the sessions, okay? So I'll just demonstrate this with you now. So Ace, come. Good. Heel. Heel. Yes. So all I'm teaching him is to get into that position. So I'll just demonstrate again. Come. Good. No. He's anticipating a little bit. Heel. Good. Heel. So remember, shoulder next to the leg, no matter where that leg goes. Good. Heel. And that's all I'm asking of him. As you can see, he loves playing this game. There's no stress involved. Yes. And he loves it. So it gives me a really good way of getting his attention when I really need it. Yeah, good boy. One more time. Ace, come. Good. Heel. Good. Heel. Down. Good. Heel. Sit. Notice I've not said the word stay. Heel. Ready. Heel. Yes. Ha, clever lad. Well done. Okay, guys, so that's the end of the induction. If you have any questions, just drop us a line in the office and we can answer them. Remember to have all your stuff ready for your first session next week, and we all look forward to meeting you and seeing your training videos on the Facebook group. So get all your stuff ready and we'll see you soon. Take care. Good boy. Well done.